Good morning and welcome to the meeting of the Ad Hoc on COVID-19 Recovery and Neighborhood Investment Committee. Today is Tuesday, November 17th. We're going to go ahead and take public comment prior to the discussion on today's agenda. Mr. Clerk, can we go ahead and call the roll?
Certainly, Madam President. Councilmember Nuri Martinez.
Present.
Councilmember Herb Wesson.
Here.
Councilmember Karen D. Price.
Here.
Councilmember Gil Cedillo.
Present.
Councilmember Micho Farrell.
Present.
You have a quorum, Madam President.
Mr. City Attorney, can you please explain our speaking rules?
Yes, thank you, Madam President. To members of the public calling in, when it's your turn to speak, please state which of the agenda items you'd like to speak on. You have 1 minute per item to speak, up to 2 minutes total. Because this is a special meeting, there's no general public comment. We'll tell you when your time is up. When speaking on the agenda items, you must be on topic. Our goal is to get through as many speakers as we can. If you're not speaking on topic, or if we can't tell whether you're speaking on topic, you'll get one brief warning from me or the chairwoman. If you do not immediately get clearly on topic or again stray off topic, the chairwoman will cut you off and you'll forfeit the rest of your speaking time. We'll take 20 minutes total of public comment. Finally, for members of the public calling in to speak, when you hear someone announce either the last 4 digits of your phone number, or if you're a blocked number, something like caller number 1, please immediately press *6 if it may be you to unmute yourself. At that point, you will be live in the meeting, and please tell us which items you'd like to speak on. We understand that you may be listening to the meeting on another device as well, or on the internet. Please try to keep one ear on the phone because there's a slight time delay between the live meeting and the broadcast. So we want you to know as soon as we've called your name that you can press *6 right away. And then please immediately also turn down the volume on the other device so we don't get feedback or confusion because of the time delay. And I believe the clerk will read in the call information briefly for members of the public.
Members of the public who would like to offer public comment on the items listed on the agenda should dial 1-669-254-5252. Again, the number is 669-254-5252 and use meeting ID number 161-292-7434. Again, the meeting ID number is 161-292-7434. And then press pound. Press pound again when prompted for participant ID. Once admitted into the meeting, press *9 to request to speak.
All right, thank you. We're going to go ahead and take public comment. Can we go ahead and take the first speaker?
Caller ending in 6978. Press *6 to unmute yourself. Please state your name and the items you'd like to speak on.
No comment, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Speaker.
There are no more speakers on the queue. So We're going to go ahead and close public comment for our ad hoc meeting this morning. Members, we're going to go ahead and take items 4 and 5 on consent unless anyone has any questions or comments on these items. Okay, seeing none, without objection, items 4 and 5 are approved. Let's move on to item number 1. Mr. Clerk, please read the item into the record, please.
Certainly, Madam Chair. Item number 1 is a motion from Council Members Rodriguez and Krikorian relative to the coronavirus relief funds, summary allocations, including programs implemented, contracts executed, costs, current expenditures, and projected year-end expenditures, and CAO report on COVID-19 short and long-term impacts on the city's budget.
Okay, thank you. Item 1, we have Patty Huber from the CAO's office to provide brief overview. We also have the department staff to answer any questions. If they're here, can you please come to the table? Patty, can you hear us? Thank you,
yes,
Patty.
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Thank you, Patty. Why don't you go ahead and, well, before I start and have you do a quick overview, For the last 7 months, members of this committee and city staff, as you all know, have worked to create programs that provide some relief and assistance to the families that are really struggling during this pandemic. I know that our staffs have been working really hard to make sure that the money is actually reaching the people that need it the most. But I also understand that unless something changes in Washington in the next month or so, we want to make sure that we've spent all the money by December 30th. The departments that have been leading this recovery effort and my staff understand the importance of the committee's work and the importance of making sure that the money is all spent by the deadline. So I know you've all been trying to meet the same objective, but I just want to make sure that we understand that as we make it to the home stretch of this money. So Patty, why don't you go ahead and provide a quick overview, and then we'll have members ask any questions.
Of course. So the report in front of you is our third update on the costs associated with the city's COVID response efforts. Through September 30th, our expenses are estimated at just shy of $500 million. And the projection through December 30th is at about $1.2 billion. Consistent with our prior reports, we have only projected through December 30th, in part because we are aligning with the Treasury or the CARES Act deadline of December 30th. But it's clear that our efforts will be ongoing into the new calendar year, and we will work with the mayor's office to develop projections going into the new calendar year and report back likely after Christmas, given the schedule. We've also included a report information in attachment 2 that shows the allocation of our coronavirus relief funds from the federal government at an amount of $576 million to date. We have also provided some reported expenditures through mid-October. That's only 175, but I would remind you that most of these projects were still ramping up or had only just been approved by about that time. We are getting bi-weekly reports from the departments on their expenditures. We believe, based on the information that we've gathered from departments, from conversations that we've had with them, that most departments will meet the full expenditures or close to full expenditures on their projections by the December 30th deadline. With one exception, homelessness is a little bit hard for us to project. We have ongoing work identifying hotels for purchase and their associated purchase price. We may be a little bit short there and anticipate reporting back in the next few weeks on a more refined estimate. In addition, during these discussions, we have identified and have made recommendations in our report on some additional CRF appropriations. The first of them is using $11 million to convert our existing microloan program to a grant program, and then to repay both the $10 million reserve fund loan as well as $1 million to the special funds that had been provided for that. Both Ewgd and HCID had identified some admin costs that were not in their original proposals, so there's just shy of $1 million for that. We also are recommending an additional $1.5 million to the Child Care Business Grant Program. That's based on identified need and an understanding they can be expended by the deadline. Additionally, we're recommending that $64 million be provided to reimburse the city's ongoing COVID response costs. That's in addition to the $145 million that has already been provided. And then because it is mid-November and the deadline is coming up in December, we have included some recommendations on how to close out the program. And basically, as departments finalize their last expenditures, some of which may happen after December, because it's understood that maybe a contractor incurs an expense in December, issuing grants or so on, but the bill does not come in until January, and then we pay the bill. That is completely understood, so long as it's very clear that the actual services provided and expenditure incurred was in the eligible period. We can make the payment after December 30th. We can't prepay things for after December 30th because some people have asked. So what we are recommending is that as our office reconciles with the department, that then we be allowed to transfer any savings to our reimbursement for city expenses, and then apply them to reimburse for anything above what we've already identified and been provided funds for, as well as then to apply it to our public safety salaries. The Treasury guidelines on this funds has a very broad understanding that our public safety employees are essentially presumed to be doing COVID response work. And we can say going back to March 1st through December that we can apply towards our public safety salaries and benefits. So that is our proposal for how to close out the program on the assumption that no extension is granted. As you have all heard, there have been conversations about a potential extension, and recognizing that if an extension is granted, we may want to revisit the use of any remaining funds. We did note in our recommendation that it is subject to an extension not being granted. I would note there are a few additional things that I believe will be discussed today, including the report that we issued on senior meals, which would provide an additional allocation of $4.7 million. Ewgd has identified some contracts. We included the contracting language in our report, but they did not. We did not have the appropriation needs, so there will be a technical amendment for that. And then I believe there is an item discussing a jobs program by Ewgd, and depending on actions on that, there may be an additional allocation for that program. And now I'm available for any questions.
All right, thank you so much, Patty. Members, are there any questions? If not, I have a few. Okay, I can go ahead and start. I don't see any. Oh, Mr. O'Farrell, there you are. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just one quick question for Patty. Thank you so much for your report and your work on this. Are there any CRF-funded programs that are not on track to spend, or have we had any unexpected delays with their allocation? Do you know of any of those circumstances at all?
So the rental assistance program had some hiccups to begin with. Yeah. We and the council district, the president's office have worked closely, and I would say it's really mostly the president's office to sort of work and reconcile. And Ewgd now believes that they will be able to fully issue those rental payments. Again, they can only be for rent through the eligible period of March through December. We did have one question there on if we prepaid for January, February, March, could we do that? The regulations are very clear. The actual service provided has to be within that time frame. It can't go past and we just prepay. Lots of questions have been asked. We've gotten lots of guidance. That was actually a very early question that was mixed by Treasury. However, the one area that is a little unsure is in our homelessness roadmap, where we have provided the $200 million. There are many, many efforts going on with state money and their applications and providing money for hotels, and then we are looking for hotels as well. GSD and our homeless team and BOE and everybody. So it's a little bit hard to accurately project, but we may be a little bit short there. And again, as I said, we intend to have a report in the next week or so, sort of tying up those efforts and giving a sense of where we might end up.
Thank you. That helps a whole lot, and we'll look forward to that report. Thank you so much.
Mr. Price?
Thank you, Madam President. Patty, thank you for your very thorough report. And again, just curious, according to our projections, how much do we still have unexpended?
So,
No, I should say not expended, but not allocated. I know a lot of it hasn't been expended yet, but our plans are that we would spend everything by December 31st, or is it the period that we still have another 20 or 30 or 10 million unallocated?
So, based on attachment 2, I am showing that there's approximately 43 million that hasn't been allocated. Again, I noted what's not included in there is the 4.7 that we recommended in senior meals. We had 2 reports that were coming together at the same time, and I didn't get that number until after my report was finalized. So we would have another 4.7 coming from there. I believe HSID needs a little, like about 2.4 or so for its contracts. And then again, Ewgd has been working on a job program that I think is going to be discussed. I do not have a number for what they might be able to do. But if I take in the other 2 that I have a number for, it brings it down to about 36 million that has not yet been allocated to anything. And realistically, our ability to spend that on external public-facing programs at this point is very limited in our ability to do anything in the next sort of month and a half.
So is our strategy like the one we are proposing for this community health program, that we get it out to a nonprofit, and then that nonprofit has, January, February, March to get the money out? Or
no,
are there some restrictions on our ability to do that?
We can't give the money to a nonprofit and then give the money out in January, February, March.
Wow.
We have to be able to show that services were provided between March and, or, expenses were incurred, services provided between March and December 30. We can't do anything to prepay and then parcel out money for activities and services occurring past December 30th unless an extension is granted. My understanding, Ewgd has been working on its proposal and may have something they can do between now and December 30. But the issue when I said we could make a payment after January, it's because maybe in January we receive a bill for a service that was provided in the eligible period. Because when we work with a contractor, they provide the service, they then give us a bill, and then we pay them for services provided. The key is the services have to have been provided by December 30th.
Okay, all right.
We have to have incurred the obligation to pay before December 30.
And then did you identify the regional recovery? This is regional recovery fund. Yeah, regional recovery fund. What did you say the status of that was in terms of monies that might be available?
Are you talking about the grant program to small
Yes.
businesses?
Yes.
So that one.
That's the question.
Yeah. So as of mid-October, we have expended about $14 million. But again, that one was approved in late August, early September. So, EWDD has indicated that they believe that they will expend the full 40 million for that.
And then lastly, Madam President, you talked about the extension of the roadmap, Patty. I read this morning, I think, that the governor is allocating another 60 million for this home key program. Is that something the city's going to be eligible for, or is that taken into consideration, or does that still have to be expended by the end of this year, as far as you know?
I'm going to say I'm not fully up to speed on what the governor has announced and what funding source that entails. So I don't know. I do understand that we qualify to apply for it. I couldn't tell you if it has what its expenditure deadline. If it is the CARES money awarded to the state, then yes, it's by December 30th. If it's other state dollars, then it may have a different timeline, but I just don't know the source of that additional allocation. I apologize.
Okay, no,
Mr.
thank you.
Price?
Thank you for your
Mr.
response,
Price?
Patty. Thank you, Madam President.
No, but there's Caroline Halls on the Zoom meeting as well, if you want to ask her the question about the regional funds.
Yes, please. Carolyn, did you hear my question, just in terms of what the status of the regional fund is?
Hi, Carolyn.
Will be another round?
I did. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Well, I can.
The status of the regional fund at the moment is that we have, as of Friday, $8 million or 20% has been allocated, paid rather, to small businesses, nonprofits, and entrepreneurs, and 64% in total has been obligated. So 25.6 million has either been paid or obligated. And what we mean by obligated is that all these small businesses, entrepreneurs, and nonprofits have all their paperwork in, have been verified, and they're in the queue to get paid. We are currently working on a week-by-week forecast. So what I mean is that going forward, we're working with our partners to take that number and project out when we will have expended all of the funds. But I'm happy to report that 0.64% is paid or obligated.
So is it too soon to say that there'll be another round, or you're confident that funds are going to be expended in this existing round?
At the moment, we have closed all the rounds. Round 6 recently closed, and we are cautiously optimistic that we will expend all of the funds. All indicators show that we will be able to expend the funds. I will report back as we make more progress, but as I indicated, $25.6 million is either paid or obligated.
Thank you.
And I would note that all of the departments who've been given CRF applications have been doing really Herculean efforts to get all of these monies out, given that they had to do it all with existing resources and staff, because there really was no time to add people and then get rid of people in a heartbeat. I mean, they would have barely have hired anybody by now if we'd given them new people just with our processes. So the efforts the departments have undergone to expend these funds has been phenomenal, and they have been super creative in overcoming lots of hurdles. And I can't even express how impressed I am with the efforts of every single department that has been working on these efforts.
Well, I too just want to thank the departments and staff for their efforts in getting these monies out. I know they've been positively impacting my community. We certainly would like to see more, but it has been a definite boost in the arm for businesses, organizations, and individuals. And I just think, Madam President, we should be doing all we can just to make sure that we get all these dollars out by the deadline. And it seems like we're on track to do that. But so thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Price. Mr. Cedillo?
Madam Chair, thank you so much. So I was looking at the, we all have not spending resources, and I want to thank Patricia Huber for laying out the limits and the restrictions for the expenditures, and I get it. But I want to note to you for consideration, as you know, we've been working for a couple years on an eminent domain project over at Hillside Via, and the assessment for that project, which would help us keep several hundred units at affordability, would position us for the eminent domain and prevent homelessness amongst the people who live there, mostly seniors, etc. Is about I think it's about 45 million. So we would be happy to work and figure out how we could commit and encumber those dollars for the assessment so that we do not end up sending a single dollar or penny back to Washington, to make sure that all of this is utilized and it makes sense in that it aligns with kind of the core objectives of these expenditures right now. So I just want to put that in there, Madam President. I'm happy to talk to you more and work with your team on this. And it's right there on the border, or it's near the border where Mr. O'Farrell and I work and have overlapping constituents. So it's just, I'm putting that in there because I know we all abhor the idea of sending a penny back to Washington, given the
Yeah, and just to clarify that is, we understand that, and just want to make sure that the CEO's office also knows you're preparing a report to ensure that the money does not go back to Washington.
Yes.
So that's in the works. So that's not something we want to do, so we've been preparing for that as well.
Good. Thank you.
A few questions. Patty, is there any update on the FEMA reimbursement? Do you have that?
Yes. So we actually submitted just this earlier this week, the first of our expedited projects. So we do anticipate getting just shy of $30 million sometime in the March timeframe. And we are busily working on the second one, which is for senior meals. We have a game plan for continuing to roll these applications out on a regular basis. The biggest hurdle is FEMA reimburses on actuals, and we have to have departments submit their actuals with all the supporting documentation, such as invoices and timesheets and so on. And there have been some hiccups in that process. We are continuing to work on it. I would expect that in the current year, I believe that we are projecting to get approximately, as I said, the 30 million this fiscal year. The other projects, as we roll them out and submit them, given the timeline, we don't anticipate that probably we would see those revenues until the following fiscal year. Again, we do have to rely on our departments, and because we have so many departments involved in different projects, such as supporting testing or supporting our project Room Key, that we need all of their actuals in before we can submit our reimbursement request. And so one department, or departments that are running slow, can then mean a holdup in submitting the application. We are actively managing that. My team is very small. It's really only one full-time person and a couple of others that we have redirected to this, and then the mayor's office has committed some resources to help us continue with the review of the actuals so that we can keep these moving forward.
Okay, and my other question is, do we know if Congress is working on a bill that would grant us an extension to the CARES Act money deadline?
There have been conversations that we have been hearing mostly before the election, not so much since the election, but we do acknowledge that there is this conversation on potentially another stimulus bill, and that it may include an extension to these funds. But for now, we believe that it is in the city's best interest to take actions that assume the December 30th deadline, so that we can show that we're on a path to expend the funds.
Okay. And so I know that in today's report, we're actually approving a reimbursement of the city's eligible COVID expenses and eventually move $75 million to the reserve fund. Do you know what our reserve fund would be after that money is moved? Do you have that with you?
I do, but I have to, I asked that question, and
it's a good question, right?
it is. And I actually, you asked it, and I'm like, I had all that information to put in my report and clearly forgot. So I apologize for that.
Yeah, that's why I asked it. It wasn't in the report, but can you get that to us?
Yes, I have it here. So with the $74 million reimbursement, the reserve fund would go up to the 4.91%. However, I would note we are recommending a reserve fund loan in the senior meals report. And if that $14 million loan is approved, then assuming the two transactions are approved, then it would be at 4.7%. And my apologies.
Okay, no problem. Thank you. I also have some questions for, I know Meg is here. I have a quick question for you. You or Yolanda, but I don't think Yolanda is in council chambers. Thanks, Meg. Quick question for you. So according to this report, we've only expended about $900,000 in the money that we set aside for homelessness. Is that right? Yeah. So what's the plan for spending down that money, and when can we see the bulk of it spent? Because that's almost $1 million. I'm sorry, that's almost $1 billion. It's $900 million. No, I'm sorry. Yeah. No, $900,000. I'm not wearing the right glasses today. I apologize. Totally $900,000.
I'm Meg Barclay with the CAO's office. Yes, a lot of the funding that was allocated, especially through the roadmap, was for capital costs associated with the establishment of new interim housing facilities that are being established through the homelessness roadmap. And so the construction has just started on those facilities that were allocated the funding, and we expect to see a lot of those expenditures coming in the next few weeks. And so we are getting weekly updates on projected expenditures, and we'll have that that projection coming out in the next in a report in the next couple of weeks, so that we can be really clear about what we expect to be spent and what will not be spent from that allocation. The rest of the funding for, especially as it relates to Project Home Key, is we're looking at the, we were authorized to look into purchasing additional hotels to fully expend the funding that was allocated for purchase price of hotels, given that there is a lot more interest out there than we had anticipated from the hotel community. And so we'll be coming back in that report. We'll also provide more recommendations to allocate and expend the rest of that funding.
And we should have enough for more acquisitions?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Carolyn, are you still with us? Quick question for you.
Yeah.
Maybe we already answered this through some of the questions that Mr. Price had, but what's the plan on spending down all the money for the LA Regional Plan? I only caught the last half of your answer.
Yes, the LA Regional Fund is on track to expend all funds allocated. We are currently at a stage where we have 20% or 8 million of the funds have been paid out to small businesses, entrepreneurs, and nonprofits. Another 17.6 million is obligated, and obligated means that all the paperwork is in place and they are just in the queue waiting to have the funds processed to their accounts. So as of today, or actually probably as of Friday, there's probably more funds that have been expended. There's 25.6 million that is either obligated or paid. Now that is separate and apart from the child care program, which has its own allocation of 10 million, 9.5 million of which has been, once you subtract out the admin fees, it's 9.5 million. That program has been oversubscribed. And so with the support of the council, we are hopeful to get additional funds so that we will provide over, I believe, about $10.5 million to child care providers. The street vendor program, we just closed on Sunday, but I believe, if I'm reading my emails correctly, that we've extended the opening for applications to come in. It is my understanding that we have received over 325, actually I don't know the number of applications, but we've certainly received a significant number of applications. I'll have better numbers on where we are with the street vendor program in the next couple of days.
That's great news. Yeah, thank you. And one last question on this item for Ms. Abigail Marquez. Are you with us? I have a quick question for you.
Yes,
There,
I'm here.
there you are. So we approved the funding for the project Safe Haven in August, and it looks like we have not spent the money yet. Why is that?
I think, no, I will say, Council President, that we are spending. We are spending on reimbursing the hotels and motels that are part of Project Safe Haven. Those are coming in a little behind. They're on a reimbursement schedule, as well as the contracts with the different service providers. The amendment that we are requesting is to allocate additional funding to one of our agencies, since we did have one agency that was initially identified to be part of the program and decided to opt out. But we are on track to expend the funding. We are, however, challenged with having to allocate the funds by December 30th. And so some of the agencies wanted to upfront rental costs, and that is not allowed under the regs, so that there will be some opportunity to redirect those funds. We're hoping to do that internally before coming back to council. But we are spending. We had to execute, I think, a total of 12 contracts for this program. Those contracts have been executed, and we have been invoicing on all of those contracts.
I understand. Thank you for explaining that. And that was my only question. Mr. Price, did you have any additional questions?
Again, on the rental assistance program, did I understand you saying we had about 40 million left in that? And my question is, why can't that go out into another round of the lottery round, or is it, did I mishear that? I don't know if that's Carolyn or Abigail. Assistance program.
Oh, I was referring to Project Safe Haven, council member. And that program also allowed for the DV providers, the domestic violence providers, to pay for rent subsidies for domestic violence survivors in hotels and motels. So it's a different program from the emergency rental assistance program.
Is there any money left in the rental assistance program, though? Is there are any funds available in that program still? That
I believe we're also on track. I'm not directly managing the emergency rental assistance, but based on recent conversations with our team, we are on track to fully expend on that program as well.
okay.
Yeah, Mr. Price, last update I received was that we're on track to spend down the entire amount.
All right. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, seeing no other questions, we'll go ahead and approve the recommendations in the CO report with some technical amendments that will be read by our clerk. If you go ahead and read those technical amendments into the record, please.
Certainly, Madam Chair. But just for the record, this item and item number 5 on the agenda was also referred to the Budget and Finance Committee.
That is correct. Thank you.
Okay, the following are the amendments to the report. Amend recommendation number 6 to read as follows. If an extension to current deadline of December 30th is not enacted, authorize the CAO, in coordination with the Chief Legislative Analyst, to apply an unrecovered public safety salary and benefits expense towards any remaining CRF allocation in accordance with Treasurer guidelines based upon the final expenditures for all other approved CRF projects, and transfer funds from the COVID-19 Federal Relief Fund number 63M, account number 10T955, reimbursement of city expenditure to the reserve fund as reimbursement for eligible public safety expenditures incurred from March 1st, 2020 to December 30, 2020. Delete recommendations 15.I and replace with the following. increase appropriation totaling $2,362,313 within the COVID-19 Federal Relief Fund number 63M, Housing and Community Investment Department number 43, for the Emergency Rental Assistance Subsidy Program as follows. Account number 43T143, Housing and Community Investment Department, $356,778. 43T299, Reimbursement of General Fund Costs, $181,921. 43T983, ERAS Technical Contracts, $140,000. 43T984, ERAS Call Center and Outreach Contracts, $183,614. 43T985, ERAS Program Administration Contract Grant, $1.5 million, for a total of $2,362,313. Add recommendations 18 and 19 to read as follows. Retroactively execute a First Amendment dated October 23, 2020 to City Contract Number C-137058 with Genesis Center, Inc. to increase the compensation amount by $129,600 for a cumulative compensation amount not to exceed $371,324.41 for the continuation of Project Safe Haven, subject to the approval of the City Attorney as to form and legality, compliance with the City's contracting requirements, and funding availability. And recommendation 19 is instruct Ewgd to identify any unspent funds within the Child Care Grant Program and work with the Low Income Investment Fund to hold a second lottery to increase grants by an amount up to $5,000 to existing awardees based on funds availability.
Thank you, sir. So I will go ahead and approve the CEO's report as amended without objection. Okay? Thank you very much. Next, let's move on to item number 2. Can you please read that into the record?
Certainly, Madam Chair. Item number 2 is the Los Angeles Housing and Community Investment Department report relative to the allocation of the Community Development Block Grant Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act funds and the Program Year 46, 2020-21 Housing and Community Development Consolidated Action Plan.
All right, thank you. And with us we have Abigail Marquez from Ewgd and Chris Espinosa from the CLA's office. So if we could go ahead and give us a quick overview of the CDBG COVID report. Who wants to start?
I'm happy to start, Council President Martinez. This is Abigail.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Good morning, Council President Martinez and members of the City Council. I am joined this morning by 2 other Ewgd colleagues, Julie O'Leary, who's the Chief of our Consolidated Planning Division, and Rebecca Ronquillo, who's also in the Comp Plan Division. And they both help to advise our city on eligible uses of entitlement grants allocated to the city through the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. The report before you seeks approval to accept the first allocation of Community Development Block Grant funding allocated through the CARES Act for a total of $31.9 million, and to amend the Program Year 47 Consolidated Action Plan, which we refer to, as you know, as the COM Plan. Ewgd consulted with various city departments and worked closely with your office, Madam President, along with our colleagues in the CLA to identify the program priorities outlined in the report. Generally, activities eligible for funding mirror what is eligible under the regular CDBG entitlement grant. However, under the CARES Act, the activities must have an established connection to preventing, preparing for, or responding to the COVID-19 pandemic. It's important to note that the CDBG funds allocated through the CARES Act were awarded with one significant waiver. The 15% public services cap is not applicable. And I think most of you that if you're familiar with CDBG entitlement programs, we're also always subjected or subject to a 15% public services cap and a 20% administrative cap. for CDBG CARES were not held to the 15% public service cap. The waiver is in line with the council motion recently adopted instructing HCLA to work with the CLA to prioritize funding to serve the hardest hit communities in the city. On September 23rd, the council adopted just over $10 million for the first entitlement amount to support the COVID-19 emergency response program. The balance of the first allocation of CDBG CARES Act funding identifies immediate and critical uses to meet acute needs related to our city's homelessness crisis, in addition to expanding existing efforts to support alternative learning centers and assistance to small businesses. And finally, as directed by a council motion introduced by you, Madam President, and Councilmember Mitchell Farrell, HCLA is proposing to launch a new program to address the growing food insecurity crisis heightened by the pandemic. According to recent reports, now during this, during the COVID pandemic, we are now seeing 1 in 4 households in Los Angeles are missing or have delayed paying major bills to ensure that they have enough to eat. Tens of thousands of Angelenos, mostly concentrated in Black and Brown communities across the city, continue to need support to access healthy meals for themselves and for their families. In response to this urgent need, HCLA is recommending to fund the LA YMCA and its network of 16 Ys across the city to create a new program that we are referring to as Feed LA. We did some research what other cities are doing across the country, specifically utilizing their CDBG CARES Act funding. New York has a comparable program that they refer to as Nourish NYC. So we are referring to our program as Feed LA. The program will focus on providing healthy meals to thousands of low-income households across the city. And through this effort, the Y will transform into community empowerment hubs, which will prioritize the needs of families who are chronically hungry and undernourished. And they will also augment efforts that are underway and being led by the Department of Recreation and Parks to provide additional access hubs for community learning. We look forward to continuing to work with you to provide immediate support to individuals and families most affected by the pandemic, and we'll provide you with another report in the coming weeks or first quarter of 2021 that seeks to allocate the additional CDBG CV funds available. I want to thank you, especially Council President Martinez and your team for your support and your guidance, and our colleagues in the CLA's office who have been working closely with HCID to identify the priorities of the report, outlined in the report. And before we pause for any questions, I want to ask my colleague Rebecca to read an amendment to the report into the record. We do want to ensure that we have the appropriate contract authorities so that we can execute agreements that will be utilizing the CDBG CV funding.
Oh, thank you, Ms. Marquez, for your kind words, but it's really been your staff and you at the helm that have really tried to, be creative in terms of how we help the neediest in our city. So I want to just thank you for that. So why don't we go ahead and have her read that into the record, the technical amendment, before I have Mr. Espinosa give his report. Is she with us? Is it Rebecca?
She's muted.
Okay.
Yeah, Rebecca, you're muted.
If we can just make contact with her so she can unmute herself. Oh, Chris Espinosa has it. He can read it as well. He's in council chambers.
Yes. Thank you. Chris Espinosa with the Office of the Chief Legislative Analyst. This is an amendment for item number 2. HCID recommends the following. Instruct the General Manager, Housing Community Investment Department, or designee to amend the city's Program Year 46 CDBG contract with LASA to add $1,620,000 in CDBG CV funds for LASA to implement homeless prevention programming previously supported by Measure H in the City of Los Angeles for the term of November 1st, 2020 through June 30th, 2021. Authorize the General Manager, Economic Workforce Development Department, or designee to amend contracts with Los Angeles Regional Initiative for Social Enterprise to add an amount not to exceed $750,000 in CDBG CV funds with the contractors identified in Council File 17-0408-S1 through December 4, 2018, CAO Report Attachment 1. LA Rise is a partnership between the city, I don't need to read that. The contract should be amended to reflect the change in funding at the same ratio as approved previously by Mayor and Council in Council File 17-0708-S1. Authorize the city attorney to add $232,965 in CDBG CV funds for the criminal record clearing project and any associated contracts as supported by Measure H in the City of Los Angeles for the term of November 1st, 2020 through June 30th, 2021.
Thank you for that, Mr. Espinosa. Did you want to add to the overview of this item?
Simply that we try to keep a good balance of different programs. They're larger scale programs to address the pandemic. You'll notice that there's business source centers funded at $2 million. Alternative learning centers, which closes out the coronavirus relief fund project at $2.2 million. And then there's three Measure H shortfall items that were previously approved by council, and that funding is for 3 months period. Finally, the pellet shelters. This is part of the homeless roadmap and the city-county agreement. The $8 million set aside will be used under the services category. We were not able to use ESG CARES Act funding, so you'll see it here in the CDBG transmittal. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Members, are there any questions? Okay, seeing none, I just have a few questions in regards to how are we just going to make sure that the YMCAs have the COVID protocols? As you know, and there's another article in today's paper about our cases, our COVID cases continue to go up. And I just want to make sure that our community empowerment hubs at the YMCAs are safe and are following COVID protocols. I think we all need to be very, very aware of that. So I just want to make sure we stay on top of it.
Yes, thank you, Council President Martinez, for the question. It's a great question, and we have been providing guidance to our existing network of contractors. So we've issued a number of information bulletins and directives that we pulled information from the County Department of Public Health. So we will do the same, provide the same guidance to the YMCAs. I think many of the council members, certainly on this committee, but across the city, have already been working with the Ys to offer ongoing food support to families. So they have some PPE. They can purchase additional PPE through this grant, but Ewgd will continue to provide the technical assistance and the guidance to ensure that those protocols are in place.
Great. And so when do you anticipate the program to start, and how long will the program run?
The funding that is being recommended is for 1 year, and we hope to launch the program in January of 2021 through December 31st of 2021, so for 1 year. And we want to take the month of December to collect all of the necessary contracting documentation to have a contract ready in place by January 1st.
All right, great. Thank you. Mr. Price?
Can you talk a little bit more about the pallet shelter program? Specifically, how many pallets is this $8 million going to buy, and where? Do we have locations, pre-identified locations, or is that still up for discussion?
I'll ask my colleague, Chris Espinosa, to answer that question.
We have Meg in the room.
He's most familiar.
Yeah, Meg is here from the CAO's office as well. Meg, do you want to go ahead and answer Mr. Price's question?
Sure. So there are currently, with the report that was approved at item 4 on today's agenda, there are 7 approved pallet shelter or tiny home sites, over 700 beds. They are located in council districts 2, 3, sorry, I'm 13, off the top of my head, I'm trying to remember all the council districts. 15, 2, 3, 13, and 15, I think, is is the correct, are the correct locations of those. I can get you the list and the bed count, but yeah, 13, 14, and 15. There's actually 14 is not a pallet shelter. So, but there are, yes, so we are recommending, there's all kinds of different types of interim housing that are recommended through roadmap, but as it relates to the pallet shelters themselves, it's 700 beds at 7 sites.
Okay. And is that, okay, all right.
All right, thank you, Mr. Price. Okay, seeing no other questions, let's go ahead and approve the recommendations in the HCID report as amended without objection. Okay, thank you very much. Let's move on to item number 3. Mr. Clerk, can you please read item number 3 into the record?
Certainly, Madam Chair. Item 3 is an Economic and Workforce Development Department report relative to the development of a New Deal-style hiring plan for our Community Care Corps.
Okay, and for this item, we have Carolyn Hall, are you still with us? From Ewgd. And we also have Gerardo Rubalcaba. Mr. Rubalcaba, there you are. Ms. Hall, are you still with us? Okay, do you want to go ahead and kick this off, Mr. Rubalcaba? I don't see Ms. Hall on our call anymore. Actually, I should say in our meeting.
Sure. Well, good morning, council members. Again, my name is Gerardo Rubalcaba, and I'm the Workforce Development Director for Ewgd. In response to a motion approved by this committee, the department did review 2 different proposals for creating a New Deal-style hiring program aimed at providing meaningful employment to residents impacted by the pandemic. The first proposal was our own proposal, which proposed using our existing workforce development system, consisting of workforce centers, resource centers, and LERI service providers to expand transitional employment opportunities to Angelenos impacted. And since March, or the beginning of the pandemic, over 900,000 residents have applied for unemployment insurance and pandemic unemployment assistance. Tens of thousands of dislocated workers are currently looking for employment and reskilling opportunities for post-pandemic careers. And because of the role our system plays in helping to transition large numbers of dislocated workers into new employment opportunities, we did think that our system was ideally suited to identify the cohorts of dislocated workers and to implement this program. The second proposal that we reviewed was an unsolicited proposal received by Community Build, which did propose to utilize $15 million in CARES Act funding to provide subsidized work experience for approximately 1,000 individuals. And the proposal Community Build will serve as the overall fiscal administrator of the program, consisting of a newly formed collaborative of 35 community-based organizations operating under the Coronavirus Community Response System of Los Angeles. In alignment with the motion of the Community Build proposal, would hire 800 community health workers and 100 technical support technicians and provide up to 300 hours of transitional employment. And although the Community Build proposal did address the urgent need for subsidized employment in the region, there were several feasibility factors that in our assessment really did impact its ability to successfully complete this project. And due to those feasibility concerns, which we outlined in our report, it was not clear to us that those issues could be overcome with sufficient time to implement this program in the next 6 weeks. So because of that, Ewgd is recommending to go with our original proposal, which again utilizes our current workforce system, which has a history of implementing similar programs in the past. Ewgd would provide program management, monitoring, and oversight of the project. And the proposed LA Community Care Corps proposed by the department would be designed as a transitional employment program that would serve about 600 participants with 200 hours of transitional employment between now and December 30th. It would also provide additional career services to those individuals to help transition to a new career post-pandemic. Because we are using our existing system that would only involve simply amending our contracts, we could expedite the project and complete within the time frame that is remaining in the CARES Act funding. We would also use our educational partners such as LAUSD, Division of Adult Education, LA Community College, and the local Cal State system to provide an assortment of training and certifications for each participant. We're also proposing to include Community Build as a technical advisor to the program to help, again, just expand the reach of our system and bring new community-based organizations into the project. Just in conclusion, because of expending $15 million in CARES Act funding between now and December 30th would be challenging for anyone to really do, again, within the last 6 weeks. However, we do think that because we are utilizing our system, which again has a history of performing these types of projects, has existing contracts that can be amended to quickly get funding out, we do believe that we can expend between approximately $5 million between now and the end of the program. So I know that's a very high-level summary, but I can answer any specific questions that you may have regarding the proposal.
Thank you, Mr. Rubalcaba. Members, does anybody have any questions for the department? Mr. O'Farrell.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks to you and Mr. Wesson for bringing this robust job creation program right when you did, at the time that we need it now more than ever. All has been said about how the economy has suffered. The local economy is really hurting as well as across the nation because of the COVID-19 pandemic. And even though there's hope on the horizon with now 2 vaccines that have proven overwhelmingly effective, it'll take all of 2021 to really recover. And even then, post-pandemic, the economy is going to be different than it was ever before. So this is a time of incredible change. And we also know that the pandemic really laid bare the systemic, structural, socioeconomic, and racial inequalities that already existed long before the pandemic struck. But with the hundreds of thousands of Angelenos, 900,000 applied for unemployment benefits in Los Angeles alone, we need this type of robust, sort of localized New Deal style hiring plan. So thanks again for that. Just a couple of quick questions, and thank you, Ewgd, for your good presentation there. How many do we hope to enroll in this program?
Our goal is to enroll 600 individuals and to provide up to 200 hours of transitional employment between now and December 30th. In addition to transitional employment, each of those participants would also get the full array of our workforce development services. So they would have access to training opportunities, they would have access to labor market information and other career services that our workforce system traditionally provides.
Thanks, Gerardo. And are we on track? Do you think we'll get to those 600 individuals before the end of the year? That's 6 weeks.
I really do believe that we can. Since the start of the pandemic, our system has come across literally over 100,000 people that have sought out different kinds of services. So we do have large numbers of participants that our system is working with. The way we structured this, our recommendations would include about 38 participants per work source center, and which would give us a total of 608. And we do think that they can find 38 individuals within the next week or so.
Okay, it sounds like we have a wide pool of clients that each resource center has to, or source center has to choose from.
Yes, exactly.
Just picking up the phone, for example. Okay, and then lastly, I talked about, I think 2021 is going to be the recovery year, recovery from the pandemic, recovery from the recession, recovery from the upheaval that we've seen over the last 4 years. And I just think it's going to be a year of recovery, and I'm ultimately optimistic about the direction that we could possibly be going in. What long-term might Ewgd be able to glean from this program and think about how this could be a pilot program for a much larger, more robust approach, especially if we get that next relief bill from Congress?
Sure, and since the start of the pandemic, there's really been a couple areas where we've been focused on within, again, our workforce development system. One is providing the support services that individuals need. We know that people have, lost their jobs. They're now, because of, we're 6-7 months into this, many are in danger of becoming homeless, right? So, making support services is really critical for participants. It's difficult for people to participate in training and those types of activities that are going to help them transition into new employment when they are in danger of losing their homes or, don't have food on the table. So, making those types of support services is really critical for our system. And then the second is providing those transitional employment opportunities is also critical because, many, because of the way the pandemic has hit, we know that some jobs job losses are temporary, and as industries recover, they expect to come back into those jobs. So those, for those participants, finding that temporary employment is really critical, as an interim kind of solution. We also know that long term, there is going to be a structural change in the economy, and many of the jobs that went away will not come back. And that's where, again, some of the services, retraining, reskilling types of services that our system can provide in partnership with all of our strategic partners will be critical in helping transition our local economy. But yeah, there's still a lot that we are learning, and I think as a whole, we're still trying to figure out what the economy will look like in 6 months or even 12 months from now.
Well, I think this is a great program, and I think that for my colleagues, for all of us in government in LA, Los Angeles, it's really important that we think very imaginatively about what we can possibly do in the interim with the funding that we have, and then think way beyond post-pandemic and already start thinking that way so that we're not caught flat-footed when, like I mentioned, perhaps there's that next federal relief bill, when there's that next opportunity that companies are thinking about expanding again. It's going to be important for us as a city to be teed up, to set the table, so to speak, so that we're prepared to really lean in right when things start getting better, so that we have the structures in place to help accommodate a quick recovery. So this is really good. Again, I thank all of you involved in making this happen.
Thank you.
Mr. Price?
Thank you, Geraldo. This is a great report. This is an exciting program, and I agree with my colleague, Mitch O'Farrell, that this is certainly timely and something that we need to be paying attention, not just for now, for the future. I'm excited about the broad distribution of these funds. I think sometimes, though, we got to be more strategic, more targeted than just dividing it by 17. Some areas, might have a greater need or a greater opportunity. So how are we going to be publicizing this program, and how do we get the word out, and how do we accommodate increasing interest that may exist in one area as opposed to another?
Sure. So a couple of things. One, we know that again, our system has literally access to tens of thousands of people that, have come seeking for services, right, since the start of the pandemic. So they do have a really broad range of individuals that they can select from. But one of the recommendations that we are also making is to include community build, which is, really a new partner, is really not part of our current workforce system. And we would include them as a technical advisor to help expand the reach of our system. So we would use them to expand and advertise to our family source system, the grid system, and others that are, may not be actively participating in the current workforce system. We would also look to your offices to help promote the program. We do think that you guys, could be
absolutely, really, yeah. I'm going to recommend that the council offices be actively engaged to the extent they want to be in getting the word out. We certainly want to work closely with you getting this word out in conjunction with the service providers and directly with the department. So we look forward to working with you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Rubalcaba, did you have a recommendation? Do you like to?
Madam Chair, Madam
yes,
President?
Yes, Mr. Wesson.
I'm so sorry to interrupt you. I was sidetracked, but I do want to thank you for your support of this concept all along. I'm very appreciative of the kind words that were said by Mr. O'Farrell and, of course, Mr. Price. But, Gilbert, Kurt, and I, ever since the pandemic hit, we were in the streets doing everything that we could to try to provide product, food, essentials to the people that we represent. And I can remember one guy telling me, hey, man, I just want to make it until tomorrow. I just want to feed my family over the weekend. So even though this might look like we're starting with only 600 people, trust me, that's 600 families that will have some resources for 200 hours. It makes a difference. During times like this is when government should rise up, not shrink. And I'm just proud of the work that we've all done, but in particular, working beside Gilbert and Curran, Gilbert in particular, where we were passing out the types of food boxes and things that the folk in our community really need. So I think it's important for us to let the people know that we give a damn and that we're going to try to do everything and anything that we can so that they can make it to tomorrow, make it to next week. And so I would recommend that we move forward and adopt the recommendation from the department, get this in place as quickly as possible, and let's change the life of, for a few weeks anyway, during the holidays, of over 600 families.
Thank you, Mr. Wesson. Thank you. Back to Mr. Rubalcaba. Did you have a recommendation, sir?
Yes, I do have a set of recommendations that would allow us or give us the authorities necessary to implement the project. And if you don't mind, I'd like to just take a few minutes to read them into the record.
Yes, please go ahead and do so.
Sure. Okay. So the general manager of Ewgd, respectfully requests that City Council, subject to the approval of the mayor, number one, authorize the general manager of Ewgd to accept up to $5 million in CARES Act funding to implement the LA Care Corps program in order to provide transitional employment to 608 individuals impacted by the coronavirus pandemic, and to allocate the funding as follows. Number one, service providers, $4.7 million, and two, Ewgd program and administration costs at $300,000. Number two, authorize the general manager of Ewgd to use the existing WorkSource Center system selected through a request for proposals in 2018 to provide transitional employment and career services. Number 3, authorize the general manager of EWDD to negotiate and execute agreements with 16 work source centers for the period of November 17, 2020 through December 30th, 2020 in the amounts described of Table 1 as subject to the review of City Council as to form and legality. Number 4, authorize the general manager of EWDD to negotiate and execute an agreement with Community Build Inc. in the amount not to exceed $200,000 to provide technical assistance to the LA Community Care Port project. Number 5, authorize the general manager of EWDD to to reallocate funding between service providers as necessary in order to maximize services to Los Angeles residents. And number 6, instruct the general manager of EWDD to prepare control instructions that are necessary technical adjustments consistent with the mayor and council action, subject to the review of the city administrative officer.
Thank you, Mr. Wesson moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. O'Farrell. Okay, we're going to go ahead and recommend that we approve without objection. Okay, that will be the order. Members, there are no more items on our agenda this morning, so our meeting is adjourned. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.